If you recall, we learned in the Mishnah about till when you can say the Shema, right? Everybody agrees from when the Kohanim go in to eat their truma, and we discussed that. Why not just say, nightfall? Why? So we learned more things, and we learned some ideas that were pertinent to that notion. But then we have a debate about till when can you say the Shema, if you recall. The final opinion is according to the rabbinic, to the rabbis, majority of opinion. They say till midnight, even though biblically you can do it till dawn, but they say till midnight because make sure you don't go and make a mistake, procrastinating, and then forgetting and going to sleep and not saying the Shema in the appropriate time. Even though if you didn't, as we had the story with Rabbi Gamliel's children who came from a wedding and they were busy in a mitzvah. What was their mitzvah? Bringing joy to the chassan and kala. So, and they, I'm sure, gave, heart and soul to that mitzvah. So they couldn't give heart and soul to the mitzvah of saying the Shema. And therefore, they came back after midnight, and the father said to say the Shema. But if you remember, we had a first opinion, and that was Rabbi Eliezer. Now, in the end, Rabbi Eliezer's opinion is not the halacha. What did he say? He said we could say it until the end of the first watch, right? Anybody wearing a watch? Because I have no idea what a watch is. Anybody have a watch on them? So you can tell me what a watch is? Oh, Reggie, okay. So please share with me and all of us. What does it mean until the end of the first watch? Okay. Now you know why I don't wear a watch. So I'm going to get asked such a question. I won't have the answer. So that's what Rabbi Eliezer says. Now we're going to go into his opinion, but I ask you a question. Before we're going to go into what the Talmud is going to ask on him, right? So remember, it's in the Mishnah, and now we're going to go to the Gemara that's going to relate to that, to his quote, his opinion. His opinion is not the halacha. Why are we discussing it? Who cares? Who cares? It's not the opinion. It's not the final halacha. Why would we be discussing it? Anybody? I have a thought on that. Anybody bothered by that? Leah, speak a bit louder. Scream.
Yes.
Roar like a lion. Okay,
yes.
Go ahead. There you go.
Yes.
Oh, it did bother you, you say. Okay. Anybody have a thought on that? So we're talking about holy sages, holy people over here, right? Anybody who's in the Mishnah is not just a holy person, but of course a very great learned and great scholar. And they reflect something of the divine truth. They reflect something of the divine truth. So much so that their opinion is included in the Mishnah, even though the final opinion doesn't go according to them, but they reflect the truth that is important for us to be aware of. So therefore, the Gemara is going to go into the teachings of Rabbi Eliezer, even though it is not the final halachic ruling is not according to him. However, he has something to teach us, both in halachic guidelines, and B, in life itself. It has to teach us something. So therefore, it's an integral part of Torah. Even to go a step further, something in the Talmudic parlance is called a havamina. Havamina, Aramaic term, which means the original thought. the original thought that even a person can have, and then actually in the end, that original thought is negated and is not held anymore. Even so, it's not an opinion in halacha, but it's an original thought that in the end is not held to be the true rationale, logic, or reasoning for something. Even that is part of Torah and has a wisdom to it. Because if it's an original thought of even any sage, true sage, talking about a real true sage of the Jewish people, that's also Torah. It's also divine wisdom, right? Think about it on a human level, right? We go through a process of things when we're understanding something. So we have our original thought, and then we process it more, and then from there we refine it, and we maybe even discard the original thought. But because of that original thought, that led us down to a conclusive thought that we have at the end. So even on human terms, we get the idea that we that things are a process. Now that's for us. Even when it comes to great holy sages and with their great intelligence and intellect, it is also, there's a process, a procedure, and the difference is even their original thought has divine wisdom to it. Is that clear? Yep. Okay. So let's now go to Rabbi Eliezer, right? Let us share screen over here. Okay. So Rabbi Eliezer, Ad Soif Hashmura. I'm in the middle over here. In the Mishnah, we learned, maybe, is that large enough that you can see? Not so much? I'm not getting the capability of making it larger. Sorry. I will read it then. And so in the Mishnah, we learn that Rabbi Eliezer establishes that one may recite the evening Shema until the end of the first watch. And the only one who appreciates this is Reggie with his watch. These watches are mentioned in the Bible as segments of the night. But it must be established, right? Those segments into precisely how many segments is the night divided, 3 or 4. There's a debate about this. Moreover, why does Rabbi Eliezer employ such inexact parameters rather than more precise definition of time? Right. In other words, what should Rabbi Eliezer say? If, let's say, the night is divided into 3 watches, that means 12 hours divided by 3. So the end of the first watch would be at the end of the 4th hour. Correctement? Right? If it was 4 watches, so 4 into 12 is 3. So then he should say at the end of the 3rd hour, you could say the Shema at night, right? So for example, if the nightfall is 6 p.m., right, till 6 a.m., 12 hours. So till 9 o'clock, you could say the Shema, according to Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, if it was 3 hours. If it was 4 hours, it would be till 10 o'clock, right? If nightfall is at 8 o'clock, so then, you of course, work with whatever the hours are and divide it by 12. So why not just simply say the end of the 3rd hour or the end of the 4th hour, which he doesn't. Oops. So what does Rabbi Eliezer actually hold? If he holds the night consists of 3 watches, let him say explicitly that one recites the evening Shema until the 4th hour. If he holds that the night consists of 4 watches, let him say explicitly until the third hour, until the end of the third hour. That's what the Gemara is asking on him. So the Talmud responds, the Gemara responds and says, actually, Rabbi Eliezer holds that the night consists of 3 watches. And he employs this particular language of watches in order to teach us. So then our question is, oh, you say there's 3 watches? So say until the end of the 4th hour. He doesn't say that because he wants to teach us something else. Remember that we're learning the Mishnah now. The Gemara is explaining the Mishnah. The Gemara and the Mishnah make up the Talmud. The Gemara is saying that he really holds by 3 watches. Why doesn't he say the end of the 4th hour? Because remember, the Mishnah is very concise. Why is it concise? Because it's the oral tradition. It's the first writing of the oral tradition by Yehuda Hanasi, by Judah the prince in the year about 180 of the Common Era, and therefore he wanted to maintain the oralness of it. And therefore, there's so much implied, so much nuanced in the words, so that you would still have to know the oral tradition to expound its teaching. So what does it want to teach us? So as it was taught in the baraita, so the particular, in order to teach us, there are watches in heaven and there are watches on earth. Now, watches in heaven, I have no idea what that means. Well, we will in a moment, I do. But, watches on earth. Reggie, where's your watch? That's a watch on, no, that's not a watch on earth. For sure not. That's not what this is referring to, right? So what does it mean that there's watches on heaven and watches on earth? So just as our night is divided into watches, so too the night in the upper worlds. As it is taught in the baraita, Rabbi Eliezer says the night consists of 3 watches, and over each and every watch, the Holy One, blessed be He, sits and roars like a lion in pain over the destruction of the temple. This imagery is derived from the reference in the Bible, as it is stated, the Lord roars, yishag, from on high, from His holy dwelling. He makes His voice heard. He roars mightily, yishag, over the dwelling place. He cries out like those who tread grapes against all the inhabitants on earth. The 3 instances, the root shin, aleph, gimel, is a root for that correspond to the 3 watches of the night. And he says that in the signs of transition between each of these 3 watches in the upper world can be sensed in this world. The first watch, the donkey brays. In the second watch, the dog barks. In the third, the people begin to rise. The baby nurses from her mother's breast, and the wife converses with her husband. Boy, does that sound mystical or what? So let's understand what's going on over here. So why is he saying the end of the first watch, which the first watch, he believes there's 3 watches in the night, right, in heaven, because there's also 3 watches down here. In other words, we would think, he wants to imply over here that we have to know that what happens in heaven happens on earth. You might think that it's only a heavenly matter, but really it reflects itself on earth, right? How so? Tell me. The first watch, the donkey brays. The second watch, the dog barks. The end of the final watch, right, morning time, the baby nurses from her mother. And the husband and wife, they're waking up because, it's soon to be sunrise. It's right before sunrise, right? The end of the third watch, which means the end of the night or early morning. Husband and wife are discussing and talking and conversing about the day's activity and the day's, involvement. So what is he saying? That what happens on high is really happening down here. But let's take that apart for a moment. What happened on high? You heard it. I read it. God roars. Why is he roaring?
In pain over the destruction of the temple.
Very good. Exactly. He's in pain. The Shekhinah is in exile. And therefore, that's the concept, the metaphor of the roar, right? That there's a pain to the Shekhinah, the divine presence of God that is in exile, right? Remember, we learned about that today in Tanya. We learned in Tanya that we should have compassion on our soul that is a part of God. We should have a compassion of our soul that where it comes from as a part of God, from the Shekhinah above. And we should have compassion on God, the Shekhinah of God, meaning the divine presence of God, that it is in exile. So here the metaphor goes a step further, that there's a pain of the very fact that God is in exile. And in every watch, he roars. Why? Because every watch represents a different element of the pain of the fact that the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed. We're in exile, and we await for the final redemption. What is the three different components over here? They're reflected here in a physical representation of what? No. Of donkey bray, dog barks, and the nursing mother, and the husband and wife that converse, right? So first of all, the notion of what happens up there evolves and reflects down here in our world. Because remember, that's what Rabbi Eliezer, why he's saying the word watch instead of the time. If he would say the time, that would suggest that what happens up there is up there, and what happens down here is a separate reality, right? So because we don't know what's up there, the watch is up there, but we do know what the end of the third hour is, or the end of the fourth hour. We know what that means, because, sorry, Reggie, I'm picking on you because Reggie has a watch. I also have a clock, but right, we have a clock, so we know. But then that would mean there's no relationship with what goes on up there and down here. There's no relationship. Rabbi Eliezer wants to teach us something that's really important. And maybe with this we understand at least one idea of why his opinion is stated, is to teach us that just like there's a watch up there, it reflects down here in the material world in a physical manifestation, right? Again, of the donkey that brays and the dog that barks, and in the baby that nurses, and the husband and wife that converse, right? So let's understand what that means, because that itself, that's what it's the evolution on how it reflects itself in a very materialistic way down here, but that also is a metaphor for us to understand a deeper understanding of how and everything from above is reflected down here. So let's understand. So the Maharsha, who's one of the great commentators of the Talmud, who always takes the Agadata and gives us a very, a deeper understanding of these allegories, right? So he explains that we have three elements of the soul, right? Which is interesting. Vilma, you asked today by the Tanya class, and this ties in. It's unbelievable, right? Three elements of the soul. What are the three elements of the soul that are integrated from within? Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama. Nefesh refers to the behavioral, physical part of the person. Sort of, it's more the physical reality, the biological part, which relates also to behavioral, right? But let's say the behavioral part of the biological part of the person, the physical reality of the person, right? That's nefesh. Ruach comes from the word spirit, refers to the emotional aspect of the person, right? And then neshama refers to the intellectual aspects of the person, right? So those are the three different watches. Why? How come? Why is that referring to three different watches? Because we're talking about watches overnight, when the neshama is being rejuvenated. So the three different aspects of our soul are being rejuvenated in three different components of the night. The first is the donkey. What's the donkey? The donkey carries a load, physical load, representing the physical load, right? That the person carries during the day. So in the first third of the night, that part of your being, the nefesh, is being rejuvenated, right? That force of is being rejuvenated at that time. Right? And specifically that, because just like Shabbos, the first part of Shabbos, Friday night, what does the first part of Shabbos relate to? Rejuvenation of the body. Why the body? Because you just come from 6 days of harsh labor, or physical, whatever, labor, right? And then you stopping. But what is the appreciation? I get, you sit down, like, at one point, right? Sun sets. There's nothing more you could do, period. So it doesn't matter. You can take that deep breath. Till then, you're rushing crazy. And not a crazy Russian, but you're rushing crazy. Right? And you are now rejuvenating, relaxing physically at that moment, right? So the same thing is every day. The first watch of that night is the physical kind of relaxation or rejuvenation, if you were, of that part of my soul. Because you just came from, especially, think about it, today we can still work at night because, hey, in my room over here, the light's on 24 hours, right? It's daytime always, right? But back in the day, daytime was daytime. Nighttime, you ceased from labor. You didn't do labor. So that was rejuvenating the physical body, represented by the bray of the donkey. Now, I never owned a donkey, but maybe someone has. But in other words, that's also the time that the donkey is braying. From what I understand from this. That's the first third. Then the middle of the night, right? The second third of the night is the spirit. The spirit. And at that time, actually, is, we don't say Tillim at that time because of the destructive forces that we need to be protected from. And that was when God redeemed us from Egypt that night. when the death of the firstborn Egyptian, the destroyer had permission to destroy. And what should have happened? Man's best friend, a dog, is there to be there as a protectorate for.
Didn't bark. They didn't bark.
They didn't bark. They were supposed to be there as a protectorate, but they didn't protect the Egyptians of the impending destruction. They didn't howl. They didn't howl because that is that time of as man's best friend and that time period where they are there to protect. They didn't protect. They didn't howl. Right.
They protected the Jews, so that
and that you're right. You're right. So what is a dog? Kelev, kule. The word kelev, chaf lamed beis, spells kule lave, all heart. Animals, dog is all heart. Right. That represents what? Ruach, the spirit of ours. That is in the second watch that is being protected, rejuvenated at that time. Is that clear? Let's get the correlation.
I'm going to go a teeny bit off topic because I heard that Hasidim don't like dogs, and I don't understand that because they really did help the Jews. Don't understand.
Anytime we're in such a position, yes, let's have the dogs be there for us. In other words, we'd rather have another child than a dog. For many people, a dog is kind of that replacement. If you need a dog because for health reasons, it's not, you can't have a dog. It's not you're not allowed to have a dog. It's not, that's not the relationship we want to develop. Right? The relationship we want to develop is with more children. Right? So, I have Hasidim that have dogs that are, they have dogs. And there might be, and there's reasons and needs for that, which is fine. Is that the general, generally not. But there's specific purposes and needs, and yes, then it's okay. It's not like you're not allowed. It's not like you're not allowed to. It does create some questions with Shabbos and Pesach, and there are things that you need to deal with, but it's it's not like you're not allowed to. Okay. But again, if you could shower your love on a child, do that instead. As a general rule. Vilma, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I wanted to ask a question.
Go ahead.
So this talk about sleep rejuvenating the soul at night, to me, means that people need to sleep however many hours they need to sleep at night and not let anything disturb them.
Yeah, you're right, absolutely. And the biggest disruptions we have is ourselves and with our, with our minds, whether they're racing in different things, because I got to get this done, I got to do this, there's so many things in our lives that we can't, deflate, and that sometimes becomes a difficulty.
That's true for many people because of the world, and because, in my opinion, you don't have boundaries and you allow other people and other things and whatever it is to disturb you. Like, sleep is to me sacred, and even more because I've learned that it rejuvenates the mind. I'm very sensitive to it personally. This is from me knowing myself. I need certain hours of sleep. Otherwise, I don't function well and I don't think as clearly.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. Well, thank you, Vilma, for segueing into the next point. the conversation between husband and wife, the third
Baby.
watch,
The
right?
baby's first.
The baby, yeah, the
Baby.
baby, right? Which I guess, when you're from there, so baby first. So I have to think about that in a moment, how that ties in. But definitely the husband and wife, their conversation. What depicts human beings in the word in Hebrew is medaber, that we're conversationalists, right? That we converse. So this is the concept over here, excuse me, that we converse with each other, and the husband and wife converse about the day's activities and the day's tasks and responsibilities, which is, of course, based on intelligence. So that's the neshama aspect of the soul. So that is when, waking up at that time, at the end of the third watch, before morning, and that represents the neshama level that has been rejuvenated. And now, like Vilma said, when you have the proper sleep and you've been rejuvenated, now your mind can work appropriately. So we have both the physical reality of the person, the first watch, that is represented metaphorically by the bray of the donkey, the second watch, which is the dog, kule lev, all heart, right, which is the ruach aspect of our soul, which is the emotional aspect of our soul. And then we have finally the neshama. The neshama is the intelligent part of our soul that is represented in the metaphor of the husband and wife, and also with the baby, nursing. I guess that represents also the
More emotional, I think. Goes with the dog. Some people love dogs and some people like kids.
somehow it doesn't come there, so we got to think about that, exactly what that, how so. So let's tie this in all together now. What is the point over here of Rabbi Eliezer's comment? Remember, Rabbi Eliezer says that we say the Shema, right, until the end of the first watch. By the way, if you remember, how come he said that is because it's based on the verse in the Shema, when you go to lie down, not when he says it's not when you're lying down, because that would be a whole night, but when you go to lie down, which would be the first third, that's when people go to sleep. That's how he bases it on the text of the Shema. The inner dimension and understanding of this is that when you're going to sleep and you are testifying on the oneness of God in the Shema, you are connecting with the divine. What is unique about your connecting with the divine at night? Night represents the lack of holiness.
Light.
The lack of light, which is the lack of holiness, exactly. Which therefore on high, right, represents the concept of exile. And that's why God is roaring by each and every watch, roaring because of the pain of being in exile. We here on earth, recognizing the pain in heaven of the divine presence that is in exile, we internalize that, right? How? Both in our behavior, right? Our physical reality, which is the nefesh, the ruach, which is our emotions, and neshama, which is our intelligence. In other words, we recognize the what's going on heaven, what's going on in the spiritual realm, it does reflect itself here on the physical realm, and literal physical in the donkey braying and the dog barking and the husband and wife conversing, right? And the different aspects of the night watch, where our soul is being rejuvenated through sleep, in order that we can be attuned to, the higher truth of what's going on above. When are we saying, or when are we connecting to that higher truth? When we're saying the Shema before we go to sleep. So before we go to sleep, Rabbi Eliezer is saying, hey, recognize that night represents the lack of clarity, the lack of light, the lack of godliness that's revealed. It represents the exile. Who's exile? The Shekhinah. So much so that it's roaring. God roars in the pain of the destruction of the Holy Temple, of being in exile. That not just the divine presence is in exile, but we, the Jewish people, are in exile. And that is painful. So when we're saying the Shema, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, it's with a cognizance in intellectually, emotionally, and viscerally, so to speak, in our very body, so to speak, right, of the fact that we're in exile, and that this Shema, declaring the oneness of Hashem, is to do that mitzvah that will, bring redemption one step closer. So here's like a powerful thing about Rabbi Eliezer. He's an opinion that we don't go by, right? We don't go by his opinion. But does he have something to tell us? Boy, does he ever. Any questions, any comments?
So when Mashiach comes and there is no more exile, what's going to happen to the night?
That's an excellent question. So let's take it a step deeper. Is night really now the opposite of light? On one level it is. But excellent question, Eugenia. Thank you for that. Excellent question. On one level, night is the opposite of day, the opposite of revelation, of clarity, of godliness, right? But in truth, in real truth, in a deeper truth, God is in the darkness. The real essence of darkness is really the presence of God. Because darkness, in the end, is a creation of God, right? It's not God is, it's not God is in the dark, not as God is, and we're speaking about Shekhinah, which is the divine presence of God. Presence meaning presence in this world, which means presence to us. But God himself, before he created the world, there was only him. After he creates the world, there's only him. He's not, I'm not hiding myself from myself. I'm hiding from you right now by covering my eyes. You can't see my eyes. I'm hiding, but not from me. I'm not hiding. So God's not hiding from himself. He's not hidden. He's not in the dark. So the true essence of darkness, the creation of God, is really that ultimately the darkness itself will shine. That's Mashiach. The darkness itself will shine.
I read that, but doesn't that mean that all that is hidden will be revealed?
Yes, that is the consequence of that. That's not what this means. Because
Okay.
what's hidden is what's hidden from me. Here we're saying that the darkness itself is really illumination. Right? That the darkness is not darkness to hide, but it is truly illumination. So in other words, and it's even a greater illumination in a sense, because light can only illuminate so much, so to speak, right? Light gives us a capability, and someone came to my house today from the city. They have to check the, to make sure that we have copper pipes that are new with the proper, new plumbing, whatever. The city's coming to do something. So he had a flashlight, and he can only see so far, because light only gives you a capability of seeing so far. Darkness, when it itself is not darkness that hides, but it'll itself be illuminated, because it will be of itself. It won't be like, you're shining something on it. When you shine something on it, right, then it's coming from an external source that is like shining, the flashlight on something. But when the thing itself that is not shining, it itself will be illuminated.
So then are you talking about people being illuminated because everybody has a light and a dark to them?
Not just people, everything. Klipa.
Okay.
Klipa is covering over on the material world, and therefore it's a darkness, because the God is hidden. But it itself will be self-illuminated. Now, all the more so we will. All the more so that we will, right? So it will be that the darkness itself, that's a very profound and deep and beautiful idea. More of that to come, by the way, in 2 weeks, this Wednesday. I didn't see everybody yet that they signed up for the course. I mean, some people I know might be taking the course in other places, like, in Ohio and in other places, and in Dollard, with my son, beautiful. And some I did notice that did sign up already, and others, I'm sure you're all waiting to sign up, because it's going to be a course of all courses about Mashiach.
Yeah, I'm considering like where I will be and the time, and like, because I know all the Chabads are offering it.
Yeah. So that's the story from today's class. Any questions, any comments?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I think I'm gonna have to change my Talmudic hat, because I still don't get the allegory with the donkey and the dog and the baby and the couple, to compare it with Hashem's raging and crying about the exile and whatever, and us saying the Shema at a certain time.
Okay, so let's repeat that. It's nighttime, God is roaring, period. 3 different watches, right? Which is affecting us on 3 different dimensions. What are the 3 different dimensions? My physical, visceral reality,
Emotional,
my emotional, and my intelligence. Meaning that the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, the fact that the Shekhinah is in exile, we're in exile, has to affect us intellectually, emotionally, and viscerally. That when we say the Shema at night, right, that we are affected in that manner of connecting to Hashem, and that our Shema that declares the oneness of God in my intelligence of neshama, my emotions of my ruach, and my physical reality of nefesh, right? That oneness of God is one of me. There's a oneness in me, in my, connection to Hashem. In that connection, in that moment, I'm helping to bring light to the darkness, to lessen the roar or the pain of exile, and to bring one step closer to final redemption. See the connection now?
A little more, but the rejuvenation, we're being rejuvenated, so it's a good thing. And the animals and the baby, I'm not sure.
So No. Okay, those were the three different watches that are affecting our soul on three different dimensions. So our soul, we're going to, our soul is overnight being rejuvenated on those three dimensions, right? That's clear, right? That makes sense. We are rejuvenating. That's God rejuvenating us during that time. We're also rejuvenating through our Shema, right? In other words, we're here to change the world for good. We're not just here to, the God should rejuvenate us. We're here also to rejuvenate ourselves and the world and bring, redemption. So we're doing it in the Shema. And overnight, overnight, I was just explaining the three watches, right? The point was, remember, because Rabbi Eliezer, the question was on Rabbi Eliezer. Why don't you just say that you say the Shema until the end of the fourth hour? Finished. No, because he wanted to teach us something at the end of the first watch. No, that there's watches that we need to know the watch. Why? Because what's up there is reflected down here. There's a relationship between up there and down here. It's not like God, actually, to put it in other terms, I've used this. It's like, it's not like God gave us, you bought a dishwasher and you got the guidelines, that booklet. No one can understand it in any ways. You need some engineer to, who understands it, right? And but you got this, this guideline, and if you will treat your fabrics appropriately because of how they, how you're supposed to use your washing machine, so then your fabrics will last. So likewise, God gave us guidelines. He gave us a Torah, 630 commandments, and and God's way up there, and we're down here, and there's no real connection between the two, except that, God gave us this. He told us to say the Shema. But is there really anything that's related to up there? No. So Rabbi Eliezer said, no. Hey, the end of the first watch, you got to say the Shema. Why? Because whatever the watch is up there, there's also a watch down here. There's a relationship between the two. We're connected. Because when the donkey brays down here, that's the end of the first watch. Why is that? Because that's the end of the first watch up there. God's roaring up there. It's reflected down here, right? In this physical way, right? Well, why the donkey bray? Oh, well, because that donkey is a reference to me, which is the ultimate purpose God created. He didn't create for the donkey to bray. He connected for us that we have a mitzvah to do. And, we need to know that relates to our soul, right? Relates to our soul, or to that dimension of the soul called nefesh, which is with that part of that soul, which is being rejuvenated when I go to sleep at that time period. But, right, that's what the watches are, being rejuvenated, because there's a connection between heaven and earth, right? There's not just heaven's up there and we're down here, and, there's.
But Hashem is roaring the whole time. He's roaring every watch. He's roaring.
Yeah. But different dimensions of why they're different watches. Then if you're just roaring, then just roar once. Why? Because the different dimensions of the soul. Because we're connected to God in different dimensions, right, of the soul. And why is that? Well, first of all, because when you go to sleep, you're getting rejuvenated, right? But furthermore, you're connected to God on those three dimensions. And therefore, when you're saying the Shema, connect to God on those three dimensions. Okay? That now clearer?
Better.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Rabbi, can I assume that when we're saying the morning Shema, it's a completely different interpretation?
I mean, obviously there's an overlap in the fact that every mitzvah that you do, there is a connection from what we do here on high, That's
Right.
true. Remember that Rabbi Eliezer was just alluding to it by saying the end of the watch, that we should know that there's a watch. We have a watch, right? Down here, just like there's a watch up there, because there's a connection between up there and down here. So even during the daytime, there's that connection. The nighttime connection is night disruption,
Okay.
right? So it's on in that aspect. But the concept of the Shema, that it is bringing
Sure.
light and bringing that, that awareness that we have, the awareness of it, apply. It's a different awareness during the day, but it's still the same idea that our Shema is, redeeming, because it's not only God, it's not the Shekhinah is just in exile at nighttime, obviously.
Well, that's what I meant.
Two,
Yeah.
night reflects that idea, is the imagery, is the metaphor for it. So, the concept still applies by day. Daytime will have a different idea too.
Okay, thank you.
But
Thank you.
excellent question. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Wow. I'll tell you the truth. I'm thank you all for being so patient and listening to me, because the truth is, my gosh, do I have a different understanding? Like, I learned this, and as I'm expressing it, it's like coming clear to me, and it's like, whoo, this is like powerful stuff. Thank you, Sarah, for Sarah and George. If you want to text, I just don't know. I mean, if you want to stay incognito, that's okay. That's fine. Nothing is to be forced over here. But if you want to let me know which Sarah it is and which George it is, just be nice. But if not, that's also okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
God bless you all. Have a wonderful. And if you want to private message me also, that's a wonderful. Just to let me know if you want to keep it that way or direct.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Beautiful lesson.
Thank you.
Awesome.
You.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah, awesome stuff.
Baruch Hashem.
God bless you all.
Thank you, thank you. I might become more knowledgeable sooner than later.
Slowly but surely, we, it knocks in. It penetrates. It does. Beautiful.
Bezrat Hashem.
All right, thanks. All the best, folks. Have a great day.